When I started playing Everspace 2, I knew comparisons to other games would be unavoidable. Elite Dangerous, No Man's Sky, Star Wars Squadrons, there is no lack of space games out there. But I never imagined I would end up thinking a lot about Skyrim. Like Skyrim, Everspace 2 is a game where you take a story mission and then, as you try to travel to wherever it is that you need to go to in order to complete it, you end up getting sidetracked time and time again by a dozen other markers and locations popping up on your screen. Distress calls, shipwrecks, unexplored facilities, outlaw camps, mining operations. There is always something out there, just barely out of your way. Always conveniently placed closer to you than your actual objective in a mechanic that's seemingly designed by some casino researcher because it's perfectly engineered to tempt you with the sheer number of possibilities, because you never know what you're gonna find. Maybe you'll fight some outlaws and get a cool weapon, or you might find a gigantic asteroid full of resources to mine, or even an entire space station with a shop and NPCs that will provide you with even more side quests and places to explore. This is very much one of those games, like Skyrim, that's just incredibly difficult to walk away from. I find myself losing track of time as I fight just one more enemy and dock just one more time to repair my ship, and then fool myself into thinking that this time I'm actually going to quit the game, but end up getting immediately lost in Everspace's perfect gameplay loop. There's a lot Everspace 2 does right, which is why it is so engaging. From the way you control your spaceship to the variety of different weapons and enemies, and the wow factor that comes from jumping off warp speed into a spectacular view of this exploding planet, or the vast surface that's being stripped of minerals by these gigantic lasers. I honestly didn't really know what to expect from this game, so if you're like me and you were wondering if this game might be for you, if you should get lost in Everspace's space, then keep watching, because I'll be going over everything in detail. First, I'll go over the gameplay and controls, then I'll be going over the combat system and the upgrades, and then I'll talk about the different locations and what you actually get to do in the game. But before I get started, if you enjoyed this video, then please consider checking out the rest of the channel and maybe think about subscribing. I cover a variety of different games, so chances are you'll find something that you'll enjoy. Alright, first let's talk about the way the ship handles, because oh my god, it is incredible. The controls are very intuitive and easy to grasp, making incredibly complex maneuvers extremely easy to pull off. You can make your way through narrow corridors and tunnels with extreme accuracy because the ship has basically no inertia. It will grind to a halt almost immediately once you let go of the keys, which almost makes it feel like you're grabbing the ship with your hand and moving it around at will. It is by far the best handling space game that I've ever played. It feels awesome to fly around and turn to slip through a small crack between space debris to get to a hidden stash, or shield yourself from enemy fire with the surface of a nearby asteroid. I'm really impressed by how incredible the controls are, to the point that it seems strange that docking your ship is done automatically, because doing it manually would require almost no effort. This freedom of movement makes space battles play out very differently to something like Star Wars. You can slow down, turn around, or drift from side to side at an instant, so fights revolve more around moving unpredictably and reducing the amount of enemies that have line of sight onto your ship by cleverly using the environment around you as cover. It's less dogfight and more descent if you're old enough to have played that in the 90s. In fact, if you're out in the open and outnumbered, you'll be taking a lot of damage very fast, which forces you to learn to prioritize targets and take them down as fast as possible to just reduce the amount of shots coming your way. Enemy design is quite varied, even though I'm pretty sure I haven't even met the toughest enemies yet. There are these drone ships that are really easy to take out, but they will hover around you, dealing small yet consistent amounts of damage, while other ships will fly around in a more traditional way and rely on shields or armor to soak up shots while they try and loop back to fire at you. There's large ships that deploy mines or missiles, and even larger ships that have a ton of health and destructible turrets that you can take out to reduce their firepower. These larger ones can be quite the challenge because they keep spawning smaller enemies while also having a ton of firepower that can shred through your shields in a few seconds. As you'd expect, you can upgrade pretty much everything in your ship, from your primary to secondary weapons to your power source, shields, armor plating, pretty much anything. There's even some RPG elements, like having abilities that work on cooldowns and have a variety of different uses, like an EMP pulse that temporarily disables enemies around you, or a damage over time poison-like effect. Some are movement abilities, like a massive boost or a short teleporter that will get you out of trouble. There's rarity, modifiers, and stats galore. As you level up, you'll increase your ship's weapon damage and hit points, but you'll also get access to a skill tree as well as ship-specific stat increases that you can use to really fine-tune your playstyle. If you like this kind of stuff in games, you will love this part of Everspace 2. As someone who really enjoys coming up with different builds for action RPG games, this is a surprisingly deep and unique system to get in a game like this. Weapon variety is also really good. You have different kinds of laser beams, a needler heat-seeking mini rocket type of bullet thing, different types of cannons and shotguns, as well as homing missiles, dumb missiles, proximity mines, deployable turrets, and they each have their own stats with their pros and cons, like sacrificing range for damage or landing easier shots at the expense of more energy consumption. I could go on and on about this because there is just so much to cover. There's different ships, each with their own unique characteristics. Small ships, large, fast, a lot of shields, no shields but a lot of armor. You get the point. I haven't even gotten around mentioning the fact that each ship has a unique ult that will charge up as you defeat enemies. There's like 5 or 6 different systems here for customizing and changing things up, but everything is super smooth and easy to interact with because the menu is incredibly clear and easy to use. Inventory management in this game is a complete non-issue. You can sell, dismantle, craft, or equip items from the exact same screen. It is one of the best interfaces that I've really seen in any game ever, to be honest. It's not perfect, but for a game where you're constantly picking up items with your tractor beam and having to deal with a limited amount of space in your ship, the interface is never a problem. Alright, so I've talked a lot about the basic aspects of gameplay, but I haven't really touched on what you actually do in this game. Well, the first thing you should know is that Everspace 2 isn't really an open world game. It's more of a hub-based game where you travel to discrete areas in space that feature large open spaces, which you then fly around in to fight, explore, solve puzzles, and trade stuff. The space in between these areas is basically an interactive map, a collection of waypoints to get you from one place to the next. Some people might be put off by this lack of continuity. The camera, for example, will slowly fade away from this not to scale world into the surface of a planet without a dramatic landing sequence or a seamless transition from space to the planet's atmosphere. However, the trade-off is that there is really no downtime. Travel is fast and short. You're hopping from one area to the next with ease, which streamlines the game and contributes greatly to its incredibly addictive gameplay loop. Locations will often have main points of interest, be it a docking station or a main asteroid or a shipwreck, but you soon learn to take an almost Breath of the Wild style approach to things. You might see a small piece of debris that's different from everything else, maybe it has some loot flying around, or there's a sealed door in an abandoned spaceship that needs to be unlocked by solving a short puzzle. This is one of the main things that has me absolutely hooked with this game. The way you keep finding cool little things everywhere is just absolutely amazing. There is so much to explore everywhere you go. It's not just waypoints the entire time. You have to keep an eye out for interesting or weird looking stuff that might be worthwhile to explore. If you're looking for a chill single player experience that scratches both the itch of space exploration and of a loot driven power fantasy, then you should seriously consider buying this game. Even though it's on early access, it already has a ton of content that I figure out is only going to get better and richer as the game keeps getting updated. I haven't really touched on the things I don't really like about it, so here we go. First of all, the music. Music has always been a very important part of gaming to me, and the tunes in Everspace 2 just sound kind of generic. They don't really elicit much emotion. They're just there. This is the music that plays while you warp somewhere. Now, imagine if it were something like this. This is something that is extremely personal, of course, but I just don't think the music really fits the game. There's just very little character to the music, to the point that I've actually turned the music volume all the way down and put the soundtrack to games like Mass Effect and Velocity 2X as background for my adventures. The story is alright, but nothing really special as well. It's just a decent enough backdrop to provide an explanation for your travels, but not very compelling, even taking into account the fact that it's not really in a finished state. And then there's the fact that you can't just save anywhere. You have to dock somewhere in order to save, which is just incredibly annoying. It does autosave when you enter an area, but I don't know, I just like manual saves and this doesn't have it really. And that's basically it. I don't really have much to complain about. This is just an extremely fun game. I mostly play multiplayer games or AAA PlayStation style action adventure games, and Everspace 2 is a really nice deviation from that. I was worried about the amount of content, but turns out that there's a huge amount. I've played for maybe 9 or 10 hours and feel like I've barely scratched the surface. This has been an incredible surprise to me. I find myself thinking about this game constantly, to the point that I've been neglecting Hitman 3 pretty much completely. So yeah, this is definitely one I would recommend. Alright, that's all I have for you today. If you do give this a try, then please leave a comment and let me know if you enjoyed it. And if you like this video, then please consider checking out the channel and subscribing if you find more stuff you like. And as always, thank you for watching, and I hope I will catch you in the next one.